Regardless of age, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religious affiliation, political persuasion, or any other diversifying factor, porn can impact anyone. If you've recognized the harmful effects of pornography in your life, or recognize the harms pornography can cause on society, we welcome you to become a fighter. As fighters, we strive to be bold, understanding, open-minded, and accepting. If you're ready to become an official fighter, we invite you to join the movement at ftnd.org/fighter. That's ftnd.org/FIGHTER. Join us in our fight for love by becoming a fighter today.
My name is Garrett Jonsson, and you're listening to Consider Before Consuming, a podcast by Fight the New Drug. And in case you're new here, Fight the New Drug is a non-religious and non-legislative organization that exists to provide individuals the opportunity to make an informed decision regarding pornography by raising awareness on its harmful effects using only science, facts, and personal accounts. We want these conversations to be educational, uplifting, and hopeful. As we sit down with experts, influencers, activists, and people with personal accounts, we cover a wide variety of topics that may be triggering to some. You can refer to the episode notes for a specific trigger warning. Listener discretion is advised. Today's episode is with Smith Alley. Like most adolescents in the world today, Smith was exposed to porn well before the age of 18. His porn consumption escalated without his parents' knowledge, and by the time he was 11, he was consuming porn 5 to 7 times per day. His porn consumption and the shame that he felt were two of the variables that led to him experiencing suicide ideation. He made plans to take his life, but he says that changed when he learned about Fight the New Drug. During this conversation, we discuss how pornography negatively impacted his life in real ways, what he did to address his compulsive porn habit, and why he's since created a supportive community where mental health is addressed. With that being said, let's jump into the conversation. We hope you enjoy this episode of Consider Before Consuming. Thank you for joining us today, man.
Yeah, of course.
I noticed that you got scratches and bruises on your legs.
Yeah.
Can you give us the background behind that?
Yes, I can. I'd be happy to. Yeah, so I play lacrosse. I'm a high school student, so I play high school lacrosse. So I'm always banged up during the spring.
Nice. You're a high school student, but you're 18?
Yeah.
Well, that makes you the youngest individual that we have ever recorded with for Consider Before Consuming. So we just want to acknowledge that and express that we feel very fortunate to have you in the studio today.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, I want to jump straight into your personal account.
Okay.
And we want this conversation to be hopeful. But to achieve that, we have to talk about the moments when you felt hopeless. So I'm just wondering if you can talk to your lowest of lows, jump straight into it. What was that for you?
Yeah, I think that I obviously had I think everyone does, that spiral. And so it's that little thing that just starts you off and leads you down the wrong path. For me, I had a really bad stutter when I was little. And so I walked into the first day of the first grade, and I sat down, and my teacher came in, started class, said that we were going to introduce ourselves, and kids started standing up. They'd say their names, sit down. Came to be my turn. I got up. I got really nervous. My legs started to shake, and I go, hi, my name's Smith, because I had this really bad speech impediment. And I remember this girl turning around, looking straight in my eyes, deep into my soul, and saying, "Why can't you talk right?" And so I said, that's the beginning. And because of that experience, because that's the day that I bought into this belief that I wasn't good enough and that I would never be good enough, that I didn't deserve, or I would never make my parents proud, that I would never really have friends who truly cared about me. After that experience, that's what led me kind of into the spiral, right? You start to hate yourself, and then, as most people do who are in those similar situations, you find a numbing substance, and for me, that was porn. And, I was exposed to pornography at 9 years old, pretty young for, when was that? I would have been 2010, 2011. and I was exposed to pornography. And like the other thing is, for standards of the world and of the nation, like I've been given a very good life. My parents are just great people, and they always had conversations about pornography and what to do when we see it, and they were very proactive about those things. And so I remember seeing this as a 9-year-old, and I knew exactly what to do. My mom had told me to turn it off and tell an adult. So I turned it off, and I set this tablet down, and immediately I think back to that little kid who didn't think that he was enough. And I was afraid that even though it wasn't my fault, like I'd been innocently exposed to online pornography just by a link that that wasn't what it appeared to be. And I clicked on that and saw some soft porn, and like that changed me. And I didn't tell them about the experience. Nothing really came of it until...
So can I stop real quick?
Yeah, of course.
So you said that you were aware of what to do, but you didn't do that. Like your parents had told you, if you see this, when you see this, stop and tell an adult or tell us. So you knew that, but you didn't do that.
Right.
Is that true?
Yeah. And
why was that?
Again, I think that, and we'd had conversations like more than just the regular porn is naked people, porn is bad, turn it off, tell an adult. And so I think that reason is I just didn't want to make them be ashamed or disappointed in me.
Yeah.
I think that, again, I already bought into this fact that I wasn't enough, but I didn't want to show them that, right? I was raised with 3 sisters. I'm my dad's only boy. And you know those families that have like 5 boys and 2 go off and they're just meh. And then there's like the 2 that do okay in life, and then there's the one like super successful. Like I felt the pressure to be the one successful because he didn't have any other boys. And so I think I just developed a sense of pride and a need to be perfect. And so because of that, I didn't want to expose any imperfections. And the other thing is, I think I was just scared. I was scared of disappointing them, and I was scared of getting in trouble.
Yeah.
Like, in my experience, for a teenage boy to want to talk to his parents about pornography,
yeah,
it's pretty unusual. That's usually just an awkward topic that you steer away from.
Yeah.
And so I think that means you're normal.
It seems like you're very comfortable with like the discomfort that can come from being vulnerable about mental health struggles.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering if that comfort comes naturally to you. Do you think you were born with this ability to like speak to mental health issues, or do you think it's something you've had to develop?
Yeah, no, I hated it. Yeah. I was definitely that kid who like never talked about his emotions. And a lot of my anger and a lot of those feelings came out as anger, and I didn't want to talk about anything. I've never felt comfortable talking about those subjects, but after dealing with that myself, I realized that my my inability to be vulnerable almost led to my death, and I don't want that to happen to anyone else. So at this point, it's like the risk of having an awkward conversation is much less than the risk of someone not feeling safe with me and being able to like talk about something hard that they're going through.
Yeah. You mentioned that the lack of vulnerability almost led to you losing your life.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to that a little bit more?
Yeah, so, going back to my story, I saw porn at 9, went back to it around 10, started using it regularly. I have a very addictive personality. It's genetic. My dad was an alcoholic before he met my mom, and just very addictive personality, very impulsive. I started using porn about 5 to 7 times a day by the time I was 11 and a half. And so it kind of, it was like my extracurricular activity almost. But I had to be really sneaky about it because my parents were the way that they were. Again, this just self-loathing. I didn't believe in myself. I didn't love myself. I didn't have confidence. I didn't believe that anyone else should love me. I knew, like, again, my parents are great people. My siblings are amazing. I knew that they were ready to love me, but I didn't feel deserving of that love. And so porn was a way that I felt this fake love that I thought I was deserving of. And so that just continued and just got into a really vicious self-hatred cycle with addiction. And in 8th grade, I remember sitting in my woodshop class, and for so long I had wanted to end my life, and for so long that I was ready to get it over with. But that day I'm like, okay, like, this needs to happen. So I made a plan in my woodshop class to take my life. I didn't feel like there was anyone who truly, if they knew me, right? And that's the whole thing, is I felt like I was a secret, and the true Smith Alley was a secret. So I felt like, if my family really knew me, because I knew that they were wanting to give me love. And I always thought, well, if they really knew me, then they wouldn't love me. They wouldn't care if I woke up the next day. If they knew who my true self was, they'd be disappointed of me and ashamed of me. And I just felt like because of that, like I was a bad kid. I felt like because of what I was involved in, I was a bad kid. And I got into that mindset, and I made a plan to take my life. However, I didn't want my parents to have to find me, because I knew that they were good people, and I knew, they'd done so much for me in my life, and I didn't want them to have to deal with that. And so this whole plan revolved around, like, them going off for a weekend. They'd usually do it like 2 to 3 times a year.
Yeah.
You get a hotel. Yeah, go get away. And so I was just ready to take my life when that happened. And I remember on a Saturday they told us that they'd booked a trip for the next weekend. And I felt like relieved almost. Like I was finally just going to be able to escape this life that I was living. And that week was it was nothing to me, everything just passed by, and I just got through the day looking forward to that weekend. And this is why, I like adore what you guys do. Clay is my hero. Sorry, I cry every time. That Wednesday I found Fight on Instagram, and I just went down the rabbit hole with it, and I just started reading everything and watching every video and looking through the social media and just liking every post. And I realized that day that I wasn't a bad kid, but I was a good kid that had been enslaved by a drug. That I was an addict, and that wasn't me, right? My actions weren't me, my thoughts weren't me. I'd been enslaved. And coincidentally, the next day, this guy, who's now one of my greatest mentors, came into my 8th grade health class and talked to us about his situation, his experience with 20 years of drug addiction, and his experience with mental health and suicide. And he had a story so similar to mine. And what I realized that day, because I knew before that that people struggled and that people wanted to take their life, and that there were, people were addicts and people used drugs, and but I never felt like I could identify with those people, right? Because I was just the smiley kid who was always in school leadership, always played sports. Again, like super normal.
Yeah.
I was a popular kid.
Yeah.
And so I never identified with those kids who were really struggling. But this guy, he came in, and I finally, for once, felt like I wasn't alone. And those two things happened, one right after another, and that saved my life. Because I decided that like my life was worth living, and even though I didn't change my habits right away, I knew that this thing that I thought had defined me, my addiction to pornography, I knew that finally wasn't me, right? Like that was something that was controlling me. That was something that everything in every way that affected me was not who I truly am.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of variables that go into like a person having suicide ideation, and you've named a couple of them: the porn consumption, and then also like the shame that you felt. Of the variables between shame and porn consumption, which was more of a variable or more impactful to you to want to take your life?
Definitely shame.
The shame.
Yeah, definitely. Just the conversation around it. And I think most importantly is like we can start a conversation, but if there aren't people who are actually talking about it, nothing's going to change, right? Because you can offer people statistics and data and whatever, but until I feel like there's an actual human conversation happening, I feel like that's when the shame breaks. And I've had my slip-ups and I've had my mistakes, but never in those times have I been like, it's all over, right?
Yeah.
I've never fallen back into that same hole or depressive state because I'm not ashamed anymore. Because I talk about that openly, and it's something that I'm willing to just battle, right? It's something that I'm willing to slip up and I get back up and I just go harder, right? Yeah. I just keep going and I keep working to overcome that. And so that's what I've tried to do is without shame, that control that porn has can't exist. Without shame, and if you have like a desire in your heart, those it just can't exist. It won't hold you for longer than you can stand on your own 2 feet. It just won't.
Well, I think this goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. I am glad that you've been able to release the shame. And I also like that you talked to some of the setbacks that you've had, because I think that unexpected setbacks can be a common pitfall that can keep people stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, I talk to a lot of people about this. And one of the biggest mistakes is that they say, I just want to get this over with. Like it's a one and done, And I think it's almost like people expect, in an analogy, I think it would be, there's this 405-pound deadlift, right? And these people oftentimes expect to hit the gym for 6 months straight and to get really strong. And then for the rest of their life, they want to be able to deadlift right? And, they're 65, haven't hit the gym in 40 years, but they should still be able to go in there and deadlift that. It's just, I think that it's never something that you just get. Again, people say, I just want to get it over with. And it for me, it'll never be that way. Yeah. It'll always be a battle of emotions and a battle of like chemical imbalance in my brain. And it'll always be something that I'm always hyper aware of.
Yeah.
And because of that, because I'm always thinking about how to beat it, I think that's when I have the greatest chance, because I'm never just going to dismiss it like, oh yeah, I won that, off to the next thing.
It's almost like your analogy speaks to like the consistency, because if the person wants to be able to lift 405 deadlift forever, they have to do it every day or, consistently.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, I've seen that that's the key to my success is I set goals and I do journaling, but if there have been times I was almost 3 years just clean, done, and it had been about 6 months since I had journaled and sat down and like looked over my goals, and I slipped up and I was like, I was like, how
You're
did
I thought
this
I was
happen?
over this.
Yeah. And I was so upset at myself. I'm like, how could I let myself do this after 3 years? Like, I'm not even dealing with anything stressful at school or, anything super emotional. I didn't even know what was happening. And I went to my therapist, and he's like, you idiot, I haven't seen you in 6 months. No wonder you lost.
Okay.
And he was like, if you don't continue that, you have to keep that strength up.
Yeah.
These things I call like my border patrol goals that I set to do every day that help me keep my mind in a good spot. If I don't do those, I'm going to fail. And so for me, it's all about that consistency.
Yeah. As a person who likes fitness, I have to ask, is that your number, like the 405 number?
No.
Is that your deadlift?
Not quite. The last time I got up 395.
There we go.
Once.
Nice.
But that was a year ago.
Nice. Well, I said this earlier, that we're fortunate to have you because, for many reasons, but one of the reasons why is because you're so young. And I'm just wondering if you can talk to how normalized porn is in like the junior high setting and the high school setting. And as you answer this question, I just want to like state this, verbalize the following, and it's that we want to be loyal to the absent. So like, as you answer this question, I don't want you to like speak to like your group of friends, because like that's their business. But like generally speaking, how normalized, how common is porn consumption amongst junior high and high school kids?
I think it's extremely common. I think even more common is the shame and the secrecy behind it. But I think in high school, it begins to become more normal and less shame, especially with certain groups. And so I'd say that it's extremely high. I mean, especially among young men, it's almost 100%. And I think it's getting to the point where, as I grow my online platform and have more people messaging me, more and more I'm seeing girls reach out as well.
Yeah.
about struggling with that. And again, that's a majority number too that has seen and struggles with pornography.
So once you learned about Fight the New Drug, was that what empowered you to finally talk to your parents?
No.
Well, how did that come about?
So there was this girl at my school, and we both liked each other. And turns out that, again, girls are now a majority too, and we had both been involved with pornography. And so over Snapchat, we had decided to meet up and to do some of the same things that we had seen in porn. And so that all happened. We had talked about it again over Snapchat. Messages disappear. That day, I remember it was the first day where I actually felt something. Like I felt a need to change my behavior and to change my path. And so I decided that I had to like cut things off and end that relationship. And so I went back, and this is like the most, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on the podcast, but the most douchebag move ever. Went home, texted her, told her that we could never talk to each other, couldn't be friends, whatever. And of course that hurt her emotionally. And so she went to her parents and said that they charged me with is what they tried to charge me with. And so then I'm this 14-year-old kid who doesn't have any evidence to prove otherwise, because it was all over Snapchat, which messages disappear.
Yeah.
And I learned that you have to go to a Supreme Court case to get Snapchat to pull files like that. And so my parents get the police to call them, and that's how my parents found out about my experience with pornography. Through that, they also found out about where I was with my mental health. And so I spent about a year and a half sorting out court stuff, got that taken care of. Gratefully, it got to a point where she kind of admitted that they didn't have any evidence and that nothing like that really went on. And so that kind of worked itself out, thankfully, after a year and a half. And that's how it all came out. And looking back on that day, it was April 23rd, 2018. My parents checked me out of school. They had just gotten a call from the police. Felt like my world was ending. Like, I was like, I don't know what college I'm going to be able to go to. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a job that I want to in the future. I don't know how this is going to affect me. And I just felt like my world was ending. And I remember that night, my mom came up to me and she grabbed my face and she said, "Smith, I will fight for you, but you have to fight for yourself first." And that's the point where I just decided that no matter what I'd gone through, that I was going to redirect, and I was going to change the path that I was on. And now, like, I would never change what happened. I would never choose a different path, because that has empowered me to change, and it's given me the opportunity to step onto the path that I want to be on.
I just want to acknowledge that it goes a step further, because it's not just your experiences that empowered you or that empower you. It's your experiences plus your willingness to be vulnerable with them.
Yeah.
Was that experience after you learned about Fight the New Drug or before you learned about Fight the New Drug? Okay.
Yeah.
So you had started to internally address your unwanted porn consumption. Like, you saw Fight the New Drug, some of the shame left, but you still hadn't completely opened up about it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. How did you feel when your parents finally did know about these things? Like, this struggle that you had been fighting?
I felt a lot of relief. I felt, I was scared. I was really scared just because of the other circumstances surrounding that situation, but I was very relieved that I didn't have to fight it by myself anymore. And more than that, I finally could see what it was, right? Like, this thing that had been eating me away, that had been like taken me to the lowest of lows. Like, I could finally point at it and say, like, that's it. And if I can conquer that problem and that problem and that problem, then maybe I can be happy again, and maybe I can love myself again.
That's cool. I think it's really cool that you experienced catharsis, that you experienced by your mom and dad being aware. And I think that's cool because today you're creating a cathartic experience for other people by being open and vulnerable with mental health, generally speaking, and with specifically about porn consumption.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope to be.
So it seems like this experience that you had, that was like this rock bottom experience. From that point, how important has your family been in your healing process?
Crucial. I mean, I think that I don't want to discredit myself, because I think that I've also, I've worked very hard to get to where I am, but I don't think I could have done it without them. And I think especially the way that they reacted, of course it wasn't perfect the way that they reacted. I don't think any parent reacts perfectly, but it was definitely with love, and I could feel that.
Yeah.
And I could feel that they were ready and they were willing to do whatever was needed to get me to where I wanted to be. And so that initial reaction was crucial, but at the same time, their just constant support was crucial. I remember I would go up into my parents' room. I'd go in and I'd just be having a hard time. I'd just climb into my mom's bed as a 16-year-old kid and just sit there, sometimes just cry when I needed to. And it was just always love, right? It was always love that I got from them. The same with my dad. I got to this point with him where I was open with him about my struggles and he was open with me. And there'd be stressful days and we'd be sitting together and he'd say, "These are the days that I just want to drink. I want to go get a bottle of whiskey and drink my sorrows away."
Yeah.
And I remember that being so important to me, and that being so having such a big effect on me, because I was like I know how you feel, I can relate to you, because
his was an actual substance and yours is a behavior, but the end result was the same, which is escapism.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool that he was able to open up or is able to open up to you about that challenge.
Yeah.
Because it makes him a better dad.
For sure.
In my opinion, because those challenges, the vulnerability he brings to the table, it makes you be like, okay, I can actually talk to some of the things I'm struggling with too.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, again, it's just that ability to say like, hey, I've been there. I think that's more powerful than what we give credit to.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if you can talk about showing up despite having the wounds that you have.
Right. Yeah, I love this quote from this book called The Wounded Healer. And I like to consider myself that because, I've been hurt and now I love to heal people. And it says something to the effect of, I'm not going to quote this perfectly, a minister's message will not be perceived as authentic unless he knows of the hurt of which he speaks. And then it says something like, the great illusion of leadership is that someone can lead out of a desert that they have never been in.
Oh, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I think for me, like, having walked through some of those deserts, having been there, I think it gives me the amazing opportunity to be able to go back and to not only heal as someone who's been wounded, but to also to guide and to give hope and to show again, like, that guy that came into my 8th grade health class and showed me that, he's been wounded too, and now he's healed, and then he helped me. Like, being that for someone else, I think that's one of the sweetest gifts that we can have in life.
Yeah. It seems like we, as people, don't want to show the wounds that we have. We want to act like everything's fine and that we have it all together and that we've never experienced these challenges.
Mm-hmm.
But you've proved, and like that book, I need to read that book. I've never read that book.
It's good.
The Wounded Healer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, getting more specific, like with your porn consumption, can you talk to how it negatively impacted you? And I'm just going to prompt you with some questions.
Okay.
For example, did your porn consumption have an impact on your sleep patterns, like in regards to quantity of sleep or quality of sleep?
Yeah. I remember people used to always joke that I looked high coming to school because I was always so tired. And I think that definitely had an impact, especially just the stress. And again, I was always scared of like my parents figuring out. I was always so worried about hiding that. And I think that stress as well, like impacted both my quality and my quantity. I used to have a really hard time going to bed. Like, it would take me 2-3 hours to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big a big part of it was that consumption.
If I'm doing some self-reflection, I don't know if you can relate to this, but like one thing that prompted that question for me to ask you is because I kind of experienced that when I was consuming porn. Like, if I consumed porn late at night, it's like my brain couldn't shut off. Like, it was like that. It was just constantly ticking, and like I couldn't go to sleep.
Yeah, I even had the experience where if I didn't consume porn at night, like, it was all I thought about, and it was almost like I had to consume it so that I could go to bed,
It's like both.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Brothers.
Yeah. That's a really interesting thing, huh?
Yeah.
You can't sleep if you do it, and you can't sleep if you don't do it.
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. What about your view of healthy sex? Like, how did your porn consumption, did it distort your view of healthy sex in any way?
I mean, I would say that I didn't know what healthy sex was. I think that it's a huge problem. Like, our sex education today, even now as like an 18-year-old, our sex education, we learn about anatomy, right? But outside of that, like, what is healthy sex? How do you what is sex? And I think that for sure I probably didn't have a good idea of what healthy sex was. It definitely led me to view people, to objectify people, which I hated. And that was a really hard turnaround for me, was to like look at someone and see them for more than just like their body, and to see them for more than just what's on the outside. And that was something I really struggled with, for even, with pornography. At first, it was fairly easy for me to quit because it had put me in this situation that I was like, okay, like I need to stop, right? I don't know where this is going to take me, but it has a lasting effect on how you view people.
Yeah.
And I remember like for years straight, I had to retrain my brain where I'd look at someone and I'd say, I'd see them differently. I'd see them as the porn industry would see them. And I like started to retrain myself, and I'd just shake my head. I'd say no to myself and I'd shake my head, because I had to retrain myself to see people for more than just their body. And like you said, people aren't products, and to see them like that. And I think that was very hard for me. And of course, like that ideology that someone is a product, or they are their body parts, that's not what healthy sex is. And so I think in that way, I didn't have a good idea of what that is.
Well, going back to talking about your age or the stage of life that you're in, you're about to experience a significant life event as you transition out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
And significant life events can be triggers. And we've talked about the importance of consistency. So my question is, what are you doing today to avoid the potential pitfalls of tomorrow? For example, graduating and transitioning away from high school.
Right. Well, I think that the first thing is I've understood and I've acknowledged the fact that the time that I'm going through is a trying time for everyone in this stage of life. I talked to a child psychologist, and they said the hardest times of transition for a child in their whole life is the first day of first grade, going into first grade, going into middle school, and leaving high school. It's not even entering high school. And so the first thing is like I acknowledge that, so that I validate all of my feelings of uncertainty and everything like that. The other thing is it's important for me now to create habits and to like solidify those habits so that I can continue to have them when I'm living by myself. And so for me, like I do this thing called mindful habit journaling, and I'm creating journals now because other teenagers and people in general, but I think I've shown teenagers how to do it, and they really love it.
That's cool.
And so each letter in mindful stands for a different goal that I set every day. Ministering, so serving someone. Intellectual, how can I make myself smarter? A no goal, so a habit that I don't like, that I want to change. Mine lately has been like cleaning my room because I'm not very good at it.
Okay.
The divine connection, so whatever you believe in, it could be Mother Nature, it could be organized religion, whatever that is, how to connect with that. Fitness, understanding emotion, so like just setting time to process the feelings that you're having. And then letters is every day I try to write a letter to either my future self or my future spouse, to kind of keep me centered on like where I want to be going and what I want to be doing. So I do that every day. And then the other thing important for me is continuing to be involved in this fight. And so, I have a company that helps parents empower them on how to set up their tech safely so that they can try and prevent early exposure, and then just help out their kids that might be struggling. And then I have a nonprofit where I travel and speak and do a lot of events like that, where that of just being involved and being able to help people, helping people helps me. Yeah. And so that's always been super important for me.
helping people helps you. That's cool. It's definitely an important part. Helping others heal helps in the healing process for sure. What advice do you have for someone that doesn't feel like they have someone that they can talk to about it?
I'm here. I think that's very normal to not feel like there's someone there for you. But I also believe that this field is just littered with warriors and healers and people who want to open up a conversation. And so I'd start little. I remember the first person I ever told wasn't even my parents. It was this guy it was right after I found Fight the New Drug. I was working at Chick-fil-A just here downtown, and this guy walked in with a Porn Kills Love shirt. And I just told him, I was like, hey man, I've been struggling with that for a long time now, and I appreciate you wearing that shirt. And it was like just the first person I ever told, and wow. Just the burden lifted off me. And I think that made it easier to tell people in the future. Start small. Message me. Message someone who you know is being an advocate in this realm. Because even if you don't have family members or friends or teachers, mentors that you can talk to, there's someone out there. I refuse to believe that there isn't someone for us to talk to, right? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Makes sense. You talked to your deeper why of like why you started to feel shameful in the first grade, that moment where that shame hit you. And as we're talking about what people can do who don't feel like they can talk to someone, I think that might be an important thing, is like figuring out your why, like their why, right? What is it that really is triggering them to want to escape?
Yeah, and I think accepting yourself too. Like, it doesn't matter who you talk to about this problem if you don't accept yourself first. I've worked with dozens and dozens of young men who, you know, they've talked to me about it, they've talked to their parents about it, but they still think that they're a horrible person, right? They haven't cut themselves some slack. And because of that A, keeps them from telling other people, B, keeps them from putting in the effort because they don't feel like they're capable of turning their life around. And C, I think that keeps them from believing that there is a higher and a greater love for them. And so I'd also say, like, just accept yourself and understand that you can't do it all, and, you know, like, cut yourself some slack. I always say that I'm my own best friend because I'm going to spend 100% of my life with myself. And so I've had to learn to enjoy the company, because for a long time I didn't. For a long time I hated myself. I hated everything about me. And I always wanted to change myself. But now, like, I lean into those weird things about me. Like, before this, literally 15 minutes before I got here, I was at my house playing with my new lightsaber that I just bought. Like, bizarre things like that. Those things that other people would call nerdy about me, they're things that I love about myself. And so I think accepting that and putting your mental health first. I have an awesome girlfriend, but I always tell her, like, that I love her. She's my second favorite person in the whole world, because my first favorite person in the whole world is myself, because it has to be myself. Because I just have to have that love for me. And so I think, like, putting yourself as your priority, and just, like, accepting yourself is so crucial.
Yeah. As I prepared for the conversation, one of the things that I heard you say, I think it was on social, somewhere on your social, I heard you talking about how you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
Does that kind of align with what you're saying? Like, you have to kind of help you have to fill your cup up first so you can help other people?
Yeah, and I talk about that all the time on my social media, because I just honestly, with high school trying to graduate, and lacrosse, and running 2 businesses, trying to manage social media, I get burnt out. And there will be times where I just put on my story like, okay, I'm peacing out for a week.
Yeah.
Because ultimately I have almost 17,000 followers on Instagram. I can't help them if I'm not first helping myself. And so I've had to learn the fact that like if I want to have the capacity to help someone else, I have to first be willing to give to myself. And sometimes that means doing less of now so that you can do more later, right? So I do less now. I take more time for myself now so that I can do more of helping people later.
Yeah.
That I can extend that period of time so that I don't just burn out.
Yeah. There's a book that I haven't read, but I want to read it. It's called The Paradox of Choice. And the whole book is based on less is more. There's something wise about taking that approach of less is more.
And I think when you do that, like, I'm sure you know those people that just like run around like a chicken with their head cut off. Like they're trying to do everything. And sometimes that results in those things that they've committed to being low quality, right? And so for me, like, I have to protect my mental health so that every interaction I have with someone who needs my help is high quality.
Yeah.
So they're getting 100% of me. And I'm not off distracted with something that was going on, 3 weeks ago that I'm still handling.
Yeah.
If something comes up and I need a week, I'm going to take a week so that when I get back, I'm not still thinking about those things, right? I shouldn't say get it over with, right? I'm going to process those emotions. I'm going to get through those things so that if I have an interaction with someone who needs me, I'm 100% there. And I think that's the same thing as like the less is more.
Yeah. Well, stepping back a bit, you mentioned that at one point you were consuming porn 5 to 7 times per day. Can you talk to some of the triggers or cues that pushed you to consume porn? Whether it was like your parents leaving the house or a certain time of day. Can you talk to some of those triggers?
Yeah, I think there's like emotional and mental triggers, but there's also situational triggers too. And so I think a big one for me is stress. Relieving stress is a big one. Anger has always been a big one. And so anytime I feel those feelings, that's been a trigger for me. But more situational, like I've seen in my life that the time that I'm urged more, they're consistent. I think that's how life is. Like we talked about being consistent. And so for me, I call this like clockwork because almost every single day when I get home from school, I'm not going to use the gross bathrooms at the school. And so I like run into my house to go to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I try not to take my phone into the bathroom with me. But every once in a while, I'll find that it's, I forgot to set it on the couch before I go to the bathroom. And that's always been like a trigger for me, right?
Yeah.
Is if I'm in the bathroom right after school, I'm tired, I woke up early to go to school, hard classes, everything like that, that's a trigger for me. For a long time, we talked about nighttime routines. That's always been a big trigger for me, especially, again, like laying in my bed and being like, okay, I can go a single night without this and trying to push through that. And then it's just, I think, and I felt like I had to watch it, to be able to fall asleep. And so I used to, I had this bed frame. It was like a twin bed frame, and it had metal bars. And for about a year, I'd put my arms up the metal bars and sleep so that I couldn't take my arms out, so that I can
Really?
like grab my phone, or I couldn't leave. It was like once I lock myself in, I'm in for the night, and I'm going to bed. And so I just sleep with my head down, buried into the pillow like that. And so I did that for a long time, because that was a trigger for me. And so I think most importantly, it's important again to understand like not only emotional and mental triggers. If you're if I'm going through something hard with my family, or if I get in a fight with my siblings, or, if a girl breaks up with me, those have always been triggers for me. If I'm stressed, or if I'm angry, if I'm sad, those kind of tie to the situational things. But at the same time, like if I'm in this room at this time where I've oftentimes consumed pornography, that's probably going to be a trigger for me as well. And so I think that was big, and just understanding those.
Yeah. That's great, man, that you've been able to identify those. How did you get to the point where you were able to identify those?
I joined a recovery group, and we used to always do like these lost battle analysis. So if you came to group and you had lost that week, then you're going to tell us exactly, like, after you lose, you record times of everything.
Okay.
You record exactly what happened, and then you talk about what happened, and everybody just basically picks you apart about like what you did wrong. They try and look at consistent habits. So I could tell you, 30 kids that I've gone to group with, and exactly what they've struggled with, like their weakest times, their weakest places in their house. I could tell you all of those things. So really just like picking those people apart. And so getting that feedback and understanding, like being able to tell them that, and they can look at the situation from an outside perspective, that's helped me target like and identify what's been a trigger for me.
Wow. Do you feel like your connection with some of these people is like a very deep, healthy connection?
So strong. Seriously, like some of my greatest friends are there. And it's just like a brotherhood for me. And so I think, again, just having those open conversations, and it's such an environment of non-judgment. Those things are super crucial for me.
Yeah. We're kind of jumping around the conversation, but it takes me back to like the catharsis that you can experience by being vulnerable and how beneficial that can be.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, start small and tell someone. Like that's so big. Mm-hmm. It's so important.
Yeah, it's key. I think that, and that's with all the problems, like you've said, I talk about mental health in general, dealing with depression myself, and some suicidal ideation myself, is that on everything, that's with everything, you just start small and open communication, vulnerability, opening up to somebody that you trust. That's the key to everything.
Yeah. Well, before we end the conversation, Smith, I want to give you the opportunity to have the last word. And so I'm just wondering if there's anything unsaid that you want to tell the world at this time.
I think my message there is always just like, there's a reason why people like me get up and battle, and there's a reason why organizations like Fight the New Drug exist, and it's because there's hope in the world. Like, and although times may feel dark, you aren't alone, and there is hope, and that's why we do this. That's why we commit time. I think it's because there's hope. And so don't lose that. Like, hold on to that hope, because, again, it'll do so much for you. You will be shocked at what just a little bit of hope and some hard work can do in your life, and I've seen that.
Well, I just want to acknowledge the hope that you provide the world. I feel more hopeful today than I did yesterday because of this conversation. I feel more hopeful right now than I did 2 hours ago even because of this conversation. And we at Fight the New Drug just want to say thank you for being with us today. It means a lot.
Of course.
And not only showing up today, but putting in the work day in and day out, going back to the consistency thing. Because, you showed up with a powerful message today. And that didn't happen by accident. So thanks, Smith.
Of course.
If you've enjoyed listening to Consider Before Consuming, consider making a one-time or recurring donation to support the podcast. Your contribution, whatever the amount, helps to support our efforts to educate individuals on the impacts of pornography. Help support the podcast by donating to Consider Before Consuming today at ftnd.org/support. That's ftnd.org/support.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Consider Before Consuming. Consider Before Consuming is brought to you by Fight the New Drug. Fight the New Drug is a non-religious and non-legislative organization that exists to provide individuals the opportunity to make an informed decision regarding pornography by raising awareness on its harmful effects using only science, facts, and personal accounts. If you want to learn more about today's guest and the conversation we had, you can check out the links included with this episode. Again, big thanks to you for listening to this conversation. As you go about your day, we invite you to increase your self-awareness, look both ways, check your blind spots, and consider before consuming.